Well, we are going to be joined here by Debbie Bacigalupi, who is a well sought after speaker on Agenda 21 and basically the agenda that these climate change enthusiasts have, and people out there like Al Gore that are trying to use this agenda, this climate change agenda, in order to thus promote their political agenda and take over control of our natural resources. So Debbie, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Millie. Thank you for having me.
Hello, Debbie. So how are you, Debbie? Can you give us a little bit of a rundown with Agenda 21?
Sure. Well, Agenda 21 is the agenda for the 21st century. And as you just mentioned, Millie, it is to, control and take control of all of our natural resources and really push us into what you mentioned earlier when you were speaking with Lord Christopher Monckton, into what we call a technocracy, a scientific dictatorship, which is why we hear all the time now, the science is settled. Don't worry your pretty little heads. We've got the science settled. Climate change is real. Global warming is real. And it's because of you, mankind, that we are seeing all these climate crises, these catastrophes. And therefore, under Agenda 21, sustainable development, we all must, change our lifestyles to live a sustainable lifestyle, walking, biking, taking public transportation, living in a resilient city in order to combat global warming, and which would then therefore save planet Earth from all of these hurricanes and these droughts and these floods and the extreme cooling and the extreme heating and anything under the sun.
Exactly. So, we've seen how technocracy plays a big role here with what we're seeing. Because I know I was talking with you early about how basically this environmental movement, this green energy movement, is communism. And then you kind of brought it to my attention that actually it has more to do with technocracy. Can you kind of explain the difference there to us?
Sure. Technocracy is more about using systems to bring us all together. Think about like a smart grid, for example, and how the big goal is to connect all of us either by our smartphones or our smart grid, our smart wells, our smart water, all of the above. Technocracy is that there are elitists who think that only the skilled, only the elite should be ruling, and that it's less about jobs, it's more about taking all of the environment's resources and pushing us into a cashless society, for example, as an example, into a new international economic order. It's about bringing us under one. It's less about one person dictating how we live our lives, which is much about communism. There are people who think that communism is more like there are a group of people who think we are lesser than. Technocracy is not like that. Technocracy is more of taking technology, manipulating science, and creating a system where we're all one. And you could think of we're one big happy family is their ultimate goal. Technocrats want to control every aspect of our lives, which is exactly what Agenda 21 is all about. If I could take a moment, Millie, to read from...
Yeah, sure. While you're looking for that, I just want to interject here that, we heard, Bill Nye, the science guy, talking about how, science should dictate policy and not politicians. And that's exactly along the lines of technocrats and technocracy.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing is we are now starting to hear mainstream media talk about technocrats, which is quite interesting because I think that they always have their pulse on what's coming up for us next as they plan our future. And we're starting to hear more and more on technocrats and technocracy. A friend of mine who recently died, his name is Dr. Istvan Marko. He is a friend of Christopher Monckton's as well as Dr. Willie Soon. And we all gathered together in Paris at the Paris Agreement in 2015. And I interviewed Dr. Istvan Marko. and bless his soul. And what he said to me about technocrats, he's from, Dr. Marco was from Belgium, another, extraordinary chemist and scientist who knows that the science is never settled. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a study.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at this right here, and right now there is an eye wall and a storm surge going on with Hurricane Irma in the Key West right now. And it is pretty alarming to see the flooding and that storm surge coming in there. So we have that actively happening right now, and I hope people are not in harm's way. But, we've also seen how the Florida government came out and they enacted curfews and mandatory evacuation orders, and they were able to prevent companies from doing price gouges. And I guess in that sense, them enacting a form of martial law, it was actually helpful and in some ways benefited people, but in other ways it didn't, because as Leanne was saying, people who didn't get out in time, they were stuck there because of the curfew, and they didn't want to go to jail for breaking that curfew. But I wanted to kind of ask you, Debbie, what's your opinion on how the government can utilize these states of emergency, and if they're able to announce or declare somehow that climate change is an ever-increasing problem, how could they then abuse that with an Agenda 21 goal in mind?
Never let a crisis go to waste. I think they use these crises to abuse. And what are they abusing? Individual freedom, where you were just talking about control. And we will see, as a result of this hurricane, no matter how it turns out, no matter how much destruction or little destruction it causes based on their predictions, we will see policy put in place in order to create a resilient city, which is a sustainable development city, which is a United Nations Agenda 21 sustainable development city, which is something that Al Gore has been promoting since the first Rio Earth Summit in 1992, which he was a delegate. And then in 1993, he became vice president with Bill Clinton, where they created Executive Order 12852, which is the President's Council on Sustainable Development. They've had in mind since probably before 1992 what our future would look like. And that's where I'll just tap into this book, Millie, really quickly, to describe to people in their own words, in Al Gore's and the...
Sure. Yeah, you go ahead and get right into that. And as far as like resilient cities, Debbie, that, it sounds innocent for the most part, because when you think about resilient, are they going to be resilient against storm surges or against hurricanes? But, you were kind of explaining to me how actually it's a lot more sinister, and I'm hoping that you'll touch into that.
Sure. Okay, so what is Agenda 21? Well, according to them, effective execution of Agenda 21 will require a profound reorientation of all human society, unlike anything the world has ever experienced. A major shift in the priorities of both governments and individuals, and an unprecedented redeployment of human and financial resources. Here's the sentence that just grabs me every time. This shift will demand that a concern for the environmental consequences of every human action. They are now blaming all of these hurricanes on human beings, on us driving cars, on, my parents being cattle ranchers and supposedly cattle, because they burp and they fart.
Yeah, they're blaming it on cow farts. I mean, it's that ridiculous. They're actually saying, you breathe too much, or you have cattle that pass gas, and that's the real cause of climate change. It couldn't be the sun, couldn't be the solar cycles. I mean, it's that ridiculous.
They rarely mention something called Pacific Decadal Oscillation either. And that is the natural volcanoes and phenomena that happens in our oceans, where the oceans do warm at times. And that's why we see a lot of migration of, salmon, for example. And salmon are being used to abuse and control, private property, individualism, freedom and liberty, and to put in these massive comprehensive plans, these blanket one-size-fits-all plans, not only just across, for example, my state of California, which, we have a cap and trade program. We also have the largest dam destruction project in worldwide history based on junk science, in a state that needs more water and needs water storage. We're destroying our water infrastructure. But you know what? It's all about control. And Here's what they say at that sentence, the one that grabs me. This shift will demand that a concern for the environmental consequences of every human action. We're breathing right now. We're using technology right now. Those are human actions. Be integrated into individual and collective decision-making at every level. This is why they will use these crises to the extreme, to force, to manipulate, to use unelected, self-appointed bureaucracies to make more laws, more rules, more regulations like your curfews, although sometimes they're really good. Like a curfew is great if there's danger involved. But afterwards, we're going to be experiencing, I just think.
Well, the problem with the idea of creating a state of emergency in the name of man-made climate change, because they can drag that out and have that be an ever, continuous thing where we're constantly in a state of emergency because we're constantly having this supposed man-made CO2 and these climate change levels.
Yes, and you just heard from both Dr. Willie Soon and Lord Monckton that there's minimal effect from carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. There's minimal effect. In fact, we've seen plants need carbon dioxide. We need carbon dioxide. And when people say to me, you know what, cars, their emissions cause so much damage. Drive along a forested road, like to Lake Tahoe, for example, on a very busy Highway 80. And if that analogy was true, I would think that we would see dead trees along the road all the time. We used to see dead trees.
If it was true, then I would think that we would see Al Gore and Leonardo DiCaprio not flying around in private jets, having giant mansions. They obviously don't seem to be very concerned with CO2 levels or a carbon footprint when it comes to their own. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Al Gore. Now, Debbie, you said that you actually got to confront Al Gore 2 different times, and I know you sent some video clips to us. And if the crew wants to go ahead and roll some of those video clips of Debbie, confronting Al Gore while she tells us about what happened. Go ahead, Debbie, tell us what happened.
Well, I'm not sure which clip is coming up. So if you can help me out there, which clip, whether it's Sundance Film Festival, which had experienced, it was in Park City earlier this year. And wow, what a storm, what a blizzard.
This is the one where we've got the snow outside and Perfect. Al Gore's walking out.
Sundance Film Festival. And if the sound is up, let me know, because I won't speak during the sound. I can't hear.
No, you're fine. Go ahead and narrate. We're just watching it.
So I had just seen Inconvenient Sequel, Al Gore's next movie, and so I waited outside. I was filming people on the streets, big fur coats, people who were calling themselves vegan while it's blistering, storming, and they're wearing those huge UGG furry boots and big furry coats. And I even caught one woman, one vegan, with her dog, a huge dog that she wore around her neck, to warm herself.
And my gosh.
Because she didn't want to wear a fur coat, so she wore her dog. Poor dog. I felt sorry for the dog. But Chelsea was there, and there was the women's march where they're wearing all those pink disgusting hats and dressing up like women's parts, just so disgusting. So I was filming people, and all of a sudden I see a crowd of like security guards, and I just happened to say, "Hey, is Al Gore in there?" And the guy was like, "No, move on." And I said, "He is in there, isn't he?" Well, anyway, I ended up camping out for over an hour and a half. I was sick, but I camped out just to try and capture him. And so if it's ready to play, let me know when it's ready to play and I'll stop. But what I was asking him about was his 10-year predictions, which his 10-year predictions were that there would be sea rise and there would be catastrophic death. And because if human beings don't live a sustainable lifestyle, if we don't move towards this sustainability movement that Al Gore has been pushing since the first Rio Earth Summit, Agenda 21, if we don't move in that direction, we are just going to destroy the planet. We're going to destroy Mother Earth.
Right. That's exactly how they control you. They use fear tactics, hysteria. They generate hysteria. And that's how they really get people on board and panicking enough to go along with this. And it's sad that they're doing it to school-aged children as well as adults.
I've got a very simple sales strategy. It's develop and sell products that I personally use for my family at affordable prices, because I want you to get great results and I want you to come back and keep buying the product, because I follow the golden rule: treat others as you want to be treated. Now, we have developed True Whey protein from one of the top developers in the country, private labeled it at an affordable price that is delicious. I put the whey in, and ours is the best for the price it is. It's high quality, with either strawberry or chocolate flavored bone broth.